Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about basically shortcuts on how to get into medical school. Some of them may or may not be shortcuts, but there are definitely options on how to get there. So if you guys haven't heard of BSMD programs, it's basically coming out of high school, you can apply to an undergrad and medical school at the same exact time. And what they'll do is they'll let you get an undergraduate degree and they'll hold an acceptance for you for medical school. So what that means is sometimes you don't have to take the MCAT, sometimes you don't have to worry about your GPA requirements. You basically already have a seat ready for you when you get to medical school. So I'm just going to go over some general things and then give you guys some examples. You can find more examples by state and by year at the AMC website. All you got to do is Google AMC BSMD Early Assurance Programs. So there's a few BSMD programs that are 6 years in length. And what that basically means is you get to finish your undergrad and your medical degree in 6 years. So an example is University of Missouri at Kansas City. And in that program, you're going to be spending the first 2 years primarily on undergraduate work, also with some medical school coursework sprinkled in. And if you think this is stressful, don't worry about it too much because you're definitely going to have to work hard. You're going to have to keep up with coursework. You can't be failing classes. And to get in is pretty hard. It's pretty competitive. But it's not as competitive as getting into med school per se, because some of these programs will have a couple hundred applicants, maybe 200, and then they'll take about 20, which isn't great, but it's a little better than some of the med schools you may be applying to 4 years if you don't go through this. So for BSMD 7-year programs, these are more common, and some examples are University of South Florida and George Washington University. Now, some of these may not actually be a Bachelor of Science. So for this one, George Washington University, it's a Bachelor's of Arts. So what you can be doing is you can be getting a degree in Bachelor's of Arts, and then you can be enrolled into the medical school once you finish that. And then the BSMD programs, the 8-year programs, they are the most common, and what that just means is you do 4 years of undergrad at the institution, and then you do 4 years of medical school at that institution. Essentially, you'll be in one place for 8 years, but as with all these programs, each program has its own specific set of requirements. For St. Louis, for example, you can't drop below a certain GPA, whereas for MSUCOM, you can have not a great GPA. You could get in with a 3.3, something like that. And some of these schools also require you to take the MCAT, even if you do get in. So it really depends program by program. You're gonna wanna do your research, look into these programs, and like I said, if you wanna know what programs are available in your state, just go to the AMC website. And I just wanna let you guys know that some of these programs do have an in-state bias. I didn't write it on here, but University of Illinois at Chicago also has one of these programs. It's a BSMD program, and they heavily prefer in-state applicants. In fact, they pretty much only interview in-state applicants. As far as the rest over here, we have MSUCOM. MSUCOM is actually really special because you can apply to their undergrad and medical school combined BSDO program at the end of your senior year of high school, and let's say you don't get in, you can also do it freshman year. If you don't get in freshman year, you can also do it sophomore year. And one thing I want to mention is once you get into these programs, some of them kind of lock it in for you. So that means you don't really have a choice. You can't even apply through the AMC website to other medical schools. You're essentially signing a contract to stay with that school. And if you do apply to other medical schools through the AMC via a regular application cycle like the most people, you're going to be foregoing your seat, which can be incredibly risky. But MSUCOM lets you apply to other medical schools and they'll hold that seat for you. So some of the flexibility in this programs may work in your favor, but if you're sure where you want to go, definitely check out these programs. Whereas Mount Sinai and University of Toledo are actually kind of special. So let's say you're watching this video and you're already a freshman in college and you're feeling, darn, I should have applied to this, but now I can't. Well, actually, if you're a sophomore in college, you can apply to the Mount Sinai Medical School and you can submit your application. They may look at you and even interview you. For University of Toledo, you actually can do that as a junior in college, and they'll interview you all the way through the end of junior year, and you could get an acceptance before the start of senior year, which would mean you don't have to take the MCAT for this specific program. Now I want to give you guys some other alternatives. Let's say none of this worked out, you haven't gotten accepted into medical school. How can you increase your chances of getting into a medical school? Well, there are a lot of master's programs popping up, like biomedical sciences, whatever they may be calling it. One recent example is Rosalind Franklin in Chicago has a biomedical sciences master's degree, where you basically take classes that other medical students are taking, and you don't take it at their rigor or pace, but once you finish, you can apply to their medical school, and because you've already been in that program and taken those classes, and they may have a requirement of, you may have to have at least 85% on all your classes. If you hit all those benchmarks, they will interview you, and your chances of getting in are up. So for that particular program, Rosalind Franklin, I want to say about between 85 to 90% of those people who did that master's degree and then applied to their medical school got in. So if you're coming out of college, you're not very competitive, you might look at a master's degree. The downside is it's going to be expensive. If you can drop 50 grand and do a master's degree, it can be in anatomy, it can be in biomedical sciences. It's got to be at that medical school institution where you interact with the faculty, where you take those classes and you do well, then your chances go up. Now let's say none of that works out. There are a few schools, in fact, there's I think only one in this country where you can actually submit your application to medical school without an MCAT score. What LACOM does is they'll actually look at your ACT score. So let's say on your MCAT you got a 508, but your ACT was 35. You can actually apply to LACOM using your ACT score, and they'll evaluate your application using that metric. So that could be good for some people that didn't kill the MCAT and still want to go to med school and can't afford to drop 50 grand. Now, some additional resources I want to talk to you guys about is there's a really great book called BSMD Programs by Johnson. You can look it up online, check it out from the library, read up on some of these programs. They have specifics in there. And as I said before, the AMC website is really good. It's got all this information. It's got links to all the schools and the websites. Before I let you guys go, I want to let you know that getting into these programs is very competitive, but some of them, it's not as competitive as getting into med school. And the way you want to get into these schools is you want to have a holistic application. Okay, what does that mean? I'll mention in other videos that you want to have a triad of clinical experiences, research, and volunteering and leadership. But how could you have this kind of stuff if you're only an 18-year-old, 19-year-old? Well, for clinical, you can actually work as a pharmacy technician. You only need to be 15 in some states. For research, this really comes down to connections. I had a friend in college that was able to do research with his dad, who's a professor at a university, and via that, he was able to get a pen. Pens are huge. They really love that stuff for holistic applications. When I was interviewing at some of these programs, there were people that had lower stats than me, yet they still got accepted because some of these people, one girl published a book, another person did X, Y, and Z. They really like these holistic applicants that they can talk about on their website that will add diversity to their med school class. Volunteering, you guys know how to do that. Research, leadership will just take time. You can't force it upon yourself. You gotta just try to mold yourself into it. But with that, I hope this video provides some good information for you guys. And if you're looking for more information, just check out these two resources down here. And definitely check those requirements for each school and each website, because that's gonna give you the most up-to-date information.